back to Zero Production Value Movie Reviews. As always, I am Eric Hoernke. Today, I'm going to be discussing the 2019 film The Last Black Man in San Francisco, directed by Joe Talbot. Now, this landed on my radar because it was landing on some best of lists of 2019. It really didn't get into any Oscar running at the Academy Awards, but it was landing on some top 10 lists, and if memory serves me, I think it's even like in some article or something it talked about it being one of President Obama's favorite films of the year. So this is Talbot's feature directorial debut, and what a debut it is. This is an excellent movie, I thought. This tells the story of a young black man in San Francisco as he strives essentially to reclaim a family home that was lost quite some time prior. He has memories of it when he was a child, but his dad is kind of a maybe like a petty criminal or just kind of a low level something. I don't know, it's not really unclear. His mom he barely knows, and I don't know, somewhere along the line lost house. They didn't really explain how it happened, other than it was, I guess, the dad's responsibility. Just lost it. So when I originally thought this movie, because I didn't really walk into this with much knowledge on it, I actually thought it was a documentary. It's a very quiet and meditative film, very much a drama, but very much excellent in the way it delivers the goods. It seems simple, but it has this deep and meaningful kind of message. It also feels very intimate and personal, and it's amazingly directed. I'm kind of reminded, it's an odd comparison to make, but I'm kind of reminded of Wes Anderson. But whereas Wes Anderson has these beautifully composed shots that have always been compared to like little dioramas, very eclectic dioramas, very composed. These are stage shots, but in a way that's very natural and organic. And instead of using little compositions, it's against the backdrop of the city as a whole. They're just really well thought out and placed and framed shots. This film stars Jimmie Fails, and it's about Jimmie Fails because that's the character's name as well. And from what I understand, it's somewhat semi-biographical about the life of Jimmie Fails. When we meet him, he's essentially homeless, but he's living with this buddy of his named Mont Allen and his blind grandfather, who's played by Danny Glover. Mont is essentially Jimmie's only friend, his best friend and his only friend, and Mont is a little bit of an odd duck. They never really give voice to it, but he has just an odd way of socially interacting, and he is insanely gifted as an artist, and he also writes plays. It lends me towards some idea that he may be to some level autistic, but like I said, they don't really seem to address it or make it a thing, but it's just noticeable. The Allen residence is in a poorer area of San Francisco, kind of, not really, it doesn't seem run down, but you think of it, it's not the greatest area. And Jimmie dreams of a house on Fillmore, which was built by his grandfather back during World War II. He makes a comparison many times about how they moved all the Japanese out to the internment camps, and that allowed his grandfather to be able to get some land and build a house. And despite his family losing it, Jimmie has these ingrained memories, I guess, from childhood that he's really kind of keyed onto, which could speak to the larger loss of the family structure as he's he's estranged from his mom and barely speaks, doesn't really have the best relationship with his dad. So that's, sort of a theme running through this. Jimmie wants the house back, but obviously prices in that area are through the roof. Like a normal person just can't afford the level of houses. I mean, they're throwing run numbers like $4 million and stuff like that, which is ridiculous. So they also strongly imply that this is sort of due to some kind of gentrification, like, which is where they basically move all the less desirable elements out and, you know, sort of beautify the neighborhood and move in a bunch of white people. That's essentially gentrification. So Jimmie actually visits the house, and we catch him and his friend Mont. They go to the house and he watches it. He actually works on the house, much to the chagrin of the kind of middle-aged white couple who live there. They try to, you know, tell him to leave and try to shoo him away, but there's not a lot of urgency to what they do, and he's basically like, I'll fix that tomorrow, don't worry, you know. And it's kind of a funny little dynamic that they have there. So fate enters the picture, and the couple who owns the house, there's like a death in the family, and this house is, you know, they have to leave, and the house ends up falling into sort of a estate. They imply it's like some sort of estate deal, like a probate thing. So the house is essentially empty and languishing, and it's apparently not on the radar of any realtor, at least at the start. Obviously, Jimmie's been watching it. So Jimmie and Mont essentially just break in and just basically move in, and they end up, you know, kind of squatting. And this is where if there's one slight down check, it might be here, is that they do address it slightly. Like he goes and introduces himself to a dude, you know, takes the impetus to go and cross at a guy who's kind of looking at him and introduce himself to like an across the street neighbor, I guess. But it seems like nobody ever comes out to investigate like why this couple is gone and now these two younger black, you know, fellas, like I guess like early mid-20s, maybe 30, but maybe in that region, right? Why they're all of a sudden living in this house. It's never really brought up or made an issue. So in any case, there's also this subplot with this group of other young black guys who kind of hang out in front of the Allen house, and they're like, you know, tattooed and shit talkers, and they constantly poke at Jimmie and Mont as they come out. And there's one of their member who actually was a childhood or grew up, went to high school with Jimmie, so they sort of have an interaction, and you know that's sort of wrapped up into this whole thing as well. This is, you know, and it's sometimes it's difficult being, you know, a middle-aged white dude trying to talk about the black experience. You know, do I really have a right to do that? Or, you know, but I feel like it's disingenuous to say that, well, it just belongs to these people or it just belongs to these people. This movie can be enjoyed by anybody, regardless of color. And I don't think it ever hurts to try to, you know, understand what anybody's going through, whether it not be somebody of a higher station than you, somebody of a lower station than you, somebody of a different sex than you, somebody of a different race than you, somebody of a different sexual identity than you. Any case, so this is a very eloquent story about the modern day black experience, but as I said, that doesn't mean it's inaccessible to whites or to anybody else. And like I said, I don't think it ever hurts to try to take a second and look at things through another person's eyes, walk a mile in their moccasins, as they say, before you just sit here and say how you believe others should be living their life or how you believe others' station in life, you know, is contrary or how you understand it. So this speaks a lot to the pressure placed on black men by their peers and how that can be a vicious cycle and come to tragedy in the end. It's about belonging It's about a general sense of purpose. It meditates on kinship to a place as a connection to possibly a fractured family unit, and what happens when that kinship is basically ripped apart. Like, how do you overcome that if it's your own, if that's what you're basing your sense of self on? Take all that, put it against the exquisitely framed backdrop of San Francisco, as directed wonderfully by Joe Talbot, and you get these stunningly beautiful depictions of this quality dramatic enterprise. Not flashy, it's a slow burn, but it carries, you can just tell that it carries such a deep personal meaning that it's hard not to be affected by it. And it does all this in just about the best possible way. So I actually thought this is, I mean, I haven't made a top 10 list for last year, but this is one of the better films I think from last year that I've seen. So for all that, I'm going to give The Last Black Man in San Francisco, directed by Joe Talbot, an A-. I love you. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching my movie review. I enjoyed making it. As always, I am Eric Hoernke. That rhymes with turnkey. And this has been a production of Zero Value. Thanks for watching.